Hello, everybody. We're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. I'm going to give you some time to join the stream, but thank you for tuning in today. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Espinosa. I'm an events manager here at Geekdom. Thanks for joining us today for our online workshop. Today, we're joined by Sputnik ATX, and they'll be talking about startup growth after COVID-19. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to them to kick things off. But the Geekdom staff will be in the background managing the chat and grabbing any questions for the workshop today. So please, we encourage any questions throughout the process, put them in Facebook or YouTube. But other than that, thanks everybody for joining, and thanks to our speakers today for leading this workshop.
Okay. Are we good to start then? Maybe we'll introduce ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oksana, do you want to go first, and then we'll jump into the presentation?
Hi, everyone. We are really thrilled to be here. This is a really phenomenal way to connect with the partners that we always have visited in person. I think this is a new way to explore how we could be closer together. Happy to talk to you about what Sputnik is, how we could help startups grow in the future, how do we see the venture landscape in general and here in Texas in particular. Basically, this hour is Joe's and myself's gift from us to you to help you succeed with whatever businesses you're running or whatever businesses you're contemplating. I will not hold back much, but really hope that will be an interactive dialogue. We are here to help you grow.
Yeah, and you know, we're going to be talking today about how you can grow your business under COVID-19, and we're also going to talk a little bit about how you can apply to our program because we're a VC fund and an accelerator, and we're going to kind of cover all of that today. And I'm Joe. I am a partner at Sputnik ATX, and so I'm kind of Oksana's sidekick. And
partner here, but yeah.
Yes, but we'll get into our presentation. So I'm going to be sharing. Yes, let me share this with you, and then as we go along here, I'll be covering this. And what you're going to see here is, hopefully, is it sharing correctly? Yeah, there we go. Right. Can everybody see my screen? I hope that they can. Yeah, we're going to start off a little bit here, just talking about what do all these companies have in common. And if you want to, you can put your comments into the chat screen right now. So what do you think all these companies have in common? So if you're live, you're watching from somewhere else, kind of put your guesses in there. And Matthew, maybe if you could help us to relay some of the things that people are posting. What are some of the guesses that people are having? I'm just curious what people think. What do all these companies have in common? Any guesses out there? Uh-oh, did we lose Matthew? I'm not sure if we lost it, folks. Maybe the sound's not working. But the thing that all these companies have in common is that all of these companies were founded in recessions or very, very like a depression. And in fact, Disney was started during the Great Depression. General Electric and General Motors were both started during bank panics. What's interesting about General Electric was started in a bank panic that was probably the most severe correction in U.S. economic history. It didn't last as long as the Great Depression, but it cut U.S. GDP in 1 year. They didn't call it GDP back then. It was economic activity, but it cut it by 40%. And we're nowhere near those levels of destruction right now. And yet all these companies were started in recessions. And economic research shows that actually you have a better chance of becoming a unicorn and doing something incredible if you were started in a recession. And you probably noticed some names that you'll recognize on here, companies like Salesforce, Square, Airbnb, Uber, Facebook, all started during very steep recessions. And so we're going to talk a little bit about why is that the case, because most people don't realize that startups during recessions actually have an advantage. We kind of think of it as worse or a harder or a bad time to do a startup, when in fact, this is the best time to do a startup. And that's when we get into consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is kind of the difference between what you're willing to pay for something and what you do pay for something. So for example, if I was willing to pay 25 cents for a candy bar, but I got that candy bar for 5 cents, then I would have 20 cents of consumer surplus, right? And so anytime you can buy something for less than you're willing to buy that item, then you've generated consumer surplus, and that's a really good thing, right? So this is a chart here that kind of shows, supply and demand, the way economists think about it. And so if you buy something, everything below the price you bought it for, that's what the producer gets. And everything, that you above that, that's the value the consumer gets. And you'll hear VCs sometimes talk about value creation and does this create value? And when people say value, they're really talking about consumer surplus, right? And there's a few costs that you have to consider. So when someone says they pay a price for something, we're not just talking about money, and that's kind of what we usually think about as money. But there are other costs when you buy things, right? On top of the money, on top of the price. There's also education. Like how much do you have to learn to be able to use it? I remember some of the early electronics that I bought. They were very complicated. They were hard to figure out. It took, in some cases, a day to figure out how to use something because it was so complicated. And so those are all education costs, things that you have to learn in order to be able to consume or use the product or service. And then there's a time cost. Sometimes buying something takes a lot more time. And an example of this might be, people who live in a rural area who have to drive an hour to go to the store, right? And so they're going to spend an hour of their time just getting to the store before they can buy the thing that they want. And so even if the price is right, if they just don't have 2 hours to drive there and back, like the time cost to be able to consume is too high. Another example of time cost is how long it takes for you to perform a certain task. And so things like meals on the go, where you have like a snack that you can eat, that saves the time, because the function is, hey, I'm trying to put nutrients into my body to eat. So rather than have a sit-down meal, if you have a drive-through, now you've saved people time, and that innovation of the drive-through, it saves people's time to get meals. And by lowering that, that lowers the cost of buying or going to eat out. But there's social costs as well. Social costs could be something as simple as the salesperson at that company is your cousin and you grew up together, and it's going to be really hard for you to call your cousin up and tell him if you're going to buy something else and not buy from him anymore. But it could also be prestige factor, that by buying a certain product, you appear to be more prestigious or your company looks better. That's why people put Intel inside on their computers, is to improve the social perceived benefit of that computer and to lower the social cost of buying the computer. Because, you know, if you saw a strange processor on the computer and you're in an IT department, if that computer crashes and has problems, people might blame you because it doesn't say Intel inside. And if it said Intel inside, people had that perception that it would be better. So that those are social costs. And then there's opportunity costs that, you know, sometimes if you choose to do one thing, that means you don't get to do another. And the opportunity costs can be very real. A lot of times when economists are trying to teach opportunity costs, they talk about dating, where if you date one person, you know, that excludes you from usually dating other people unless you like to get into a lot of trouble with the person you're dating. And so you got to kind of choose the thing that you think is the best opportunity and figure that out, because there is an opportunity cost to doing something as well. And Oksana, maybe, you know, it's funny, there's the quote on this page that recessions clarify value propositions. That's actually something Oksana originally said. And I put it in the presentation. I don't know if do you remember saying that, Oksana?
I think I do remember. Another thing I want to add is actually the mindset, because what people who are not in the startup world forget how crazy mission impossible the everyday life of the startup is. So while for all of us, whatever is happening right now is a really big shocker to the system, I would say that the startups are already trained to operate on the extreme. So you're just adding a little bit more to that. Most of them have that endurance. Most of them had figured out how to solve something for the impossible things. Just if you think about, if you were to put an elite runner that normally an elite runner and someone like me who could barely make 2K, and you make us run 10K, and you make it a lot hotter than normal, the chances of that person completing the race well and not failing and me doing the same are quite dramatically different, just because that person already trained on many, many different conditions. So yes, it might be a little bit harder, but it will not be as difficult because that's what you train for. And I want the startups who are solving for this, adopt that mindset right now, because you are already elite business performers. What you're doing is already very, very difficult. Yes, this is more difficult, but you've seen worse for most of you.
And what a lot of people don't realize is that when you're in a period of economic expansion where the economy is growing really fast, these costs are all higher. You know, you're taking up so much more personal risk to switch. It's kind of like the saying, if it's not broken, don't fix it. People lose their jobs during good times by experimenting on things that may or may not work out. No one loses their job when it's a boom time by just repeating the thing that's making money. And so when you're a startup and you have something new and you're just desperately trying to get people to switch and do something different, it's actually harder to get them to try it because they just don't have as much at risk. But in a recession, now you really have to figure this out, right? Like your company could be going bankrupt if you don't figure out a way to cut costs and make things easier. And so it doesn't matter if your cousin Bob is the guy that sold you the software package, you know, forget Bob. I've got to find a way to cut HR expenses by 35%. And hey, this software package will enable me to do half of that, right? And so this is where these value propositions become very clear in a recession. People don't think as much about the social costs, and the opportunity costs are much more related to a company declaring bankruptcy than how much money you'll make. And that makes people get very focused on doing things that improve productivity and lower cost which plays directly into the hands of most startups, because a value creating startup is generally doing that. Yeah. All right. So if you are that company and you have that cool thing and you're going to improve and you have a great value proposition, right? How can you then sell to these big companies? How can you improve your value proposition to increase consumer surplus? And we can look at all of those same categories of costs. The first, the monetary cost. You know, I always tell people you can lower the price, and that's really easy. It's hard to raise prices later, right? And so if you can't come up with a price that has a positive contribution margin, meaning you're selling it for more than it costs for you to produce it, right? And if people aren't willing to buy it for that price, then you're probably not generating enough consumer surplus that it's worth it for people to switch. And in a recession where people are desperately, desperately looking for value, if you still can't sell it, that actually is more of a bad sign, right? And so I would just say lowering your price is usually the worst option, but you just have to find the right price where people can, you know, get started. Now, I'll also add that there's nothing wrong with having like a freemium model where you get a few months free up front and then they pay for it. That's totally fine. Those are ways that make it easy for people to try before they commit. I'm talking about like long run structural changes to pricing. And maybe I'm going too far into this, Oksana, but I would just say monetary costs should be the last thing you get too hung up on. What are your thoughts, Oksana?
Yeah, give me a second. It takes me a second to unmute this. Yeah,
oh,
I
it's
agree.
Okay.
I agree, but I think it really depends upon like the sector you operate. I think the really important thing is just to be crystal clear on why your product, why now.
Yeah.
In any of this, understanding your customer is really, really key. Because the better you understand what problem they're solving for, just like a previous example with HR, if you know this is like that person had been tasked with cutting 35% out of the HR package, the way you talk to them, and in that case, it's going to be a monetary cost. In some other says, like, you know, you are a startup founder that, like, for instance, if you think about everyone have experienced all of our favorite food spots have just switched to delivery and made it a lot more tolerable. My, like call it like the addicted, I am addicted to Taco Deli, and Taco Deli had always obscenely good food and obscenely bad web interface, where if you tried to order something online, it was close to impossible, and they didn't have to do that. So now, like, there is an opportunity because they could not offer this this service in a different way. So someone have sold them very quickly they're not best in class, but they are miles and miles above where they were. So the company that sold them that was a startup that probably benefited from this, and they probably were just saying, you're going to lose business, you're going to do that. So they're really trying to understand how, like, because the environment has changed not just for you but for your customers, and so as a result, you need to sell into that. For instance, maybe a good example to bring just our recent cohort, the company is called ModTech Labs. They basically make movie magic. When you go and you see special effects, ModTech Labs is making this a lot easier, a lot cheaper, and they do wicked technology. They add AI and like multi-camera know-how to make it happen. They were just one of the few upstarts, and they were selling, but not as quickly. When they realized that the studios got locked up and they could not move forward, all of a sudden their product became a necessity. They had to switch their selling script, but in that case, the time cost of like the surplus of time that they were gifting to their customers made trying them a lot easier. And now that people tried them, they're very difficult to not continue using because their product is amazing.
And I really appreciate that example, Oksana, because ModTech Labs kind of followed this playbook in how they changed their go-to-market strategy under COVID. And this is a company that's really only 6 or 7 months old. And right now they have a $600,000 order backlog that they're going to, have to fill this month because they were very good at doing this very thing. They're offering a software product that saves film studios millions and millions of dollars. It's not selling a candy bar, if you will. However, for the special effects studios and for people in the entertainment industry to use the product, there's an education cost. There's a little bit of a time cost involved because it does change the processes of the studios, and they're going to have to go through and make changes to how they do business internally in order to use it. And there's a social cost, right? Because they're going away from platforms, even though the technology is like 20 years old. It's a proven technology with blockbuster summer hits behind it. So when you switch in their industry to a new technology, there's a bit of a social transition there, if you will. And the opportunity cost maybe I'll discuss is really big in that industry too. And so what they did was they created an API interface that made it stupidly easy for anyone to use what they do, where literally you're just processing video through them, right?
Yep.
And what Oksana said, where they were training the studios, they're going out and, because one of the things they do is they eliminate the need for green screen, blue screen, all that stuff. They give you the ability to immediately volumetric process the whole thing. So you could change the camera angles and things like that without having to reshoot. But then teaching people that now that technology exists, that's something you have to do. They've really simplified how they do that. On the time cost, they've made it stupidly easy for people to get started. You literally just sign their SaaS agreement, and now you start sending stuff through the API, and it's that easy. And for people in a tech-heavy field, being able to just send something to an API is literally, for the rest of us, just like clicking a button on your iPod to get started. It's just that stupidly easy for people in the tech world. And where they're working now is on this social and opportunity cost, because they save film studios so much money and so much time and so many reshoots that in their marketing they're going to be kind of emphasizing that, if this studio is trying to get their film to market on time during COVID-19, which is really hard to do because you have production people at home and people working remotely trying to do all this stuff. Well, they streamline all of that and can actually accelerate it over a normal timetable. So, in their industry, you expend millions of dollars to create an asset when you do a shoot, and then it takes sometimes a year to 2 years to do all the post-production work. Well, if you can compress that post-production work into 6 months or less, you can save the film studio a lot of money, and they can get their films to market faster. And right now, like for streaming and all this stuff, there's huge demand for new entertainment, and it's more difficult to produce. So they're putting themselves in this beautiful position where they can go to the film studios and say, the studios that use us are able to get product to market right now. Can you? And then again, using that fear of missing out, because in a recession, that fear of missing out is a lot stronger. And so when you write copy that utilizes this fear of missing out in recessions, it's a lot more effective. And, maybe using a different example on those opportunity costs is that, it's kind of like writing, all of your competitors are switching to us. We're going to save them 30%. Why aren't you? Yeah. Something like that. It really clarifies that, oh my gosh, everybody else is doing this. If I don't do it, then maybe I'm the company that goes bankrupt, right? Because when in recessions, when fear is motivating people, again, they're willing to take more risks to save money, to get more value, and that all plays into the hands of making your startup easier to sell product.
And one of the things I just wanted to point out, I obviously agree with everything that Joe just said. In order to execute on this, though, you have to conquer your own fear. You have to figure out, how do you as a startup founder react in the crisis? We often tag team, and sometimes Joe goes into more nerdy, like economics things. And I often just the flip side of this is your mental game. And so one of our alumni, Marissa Limshako, have wrote an excellent blog post, because she is a West Point grad that commanded battalion in Iraq before she went into the startup game. And so she goes through an excellent way to recompose yourself when you're facing with impossibly difficult situation. Because in order for you to see how you pivot, how you twist all those costs, you have to be in the position of mentally, the position of confidence, the position of abundance, the position where you see all of those options. What I've seen happen often, and I think for that, like there is nothing that beats a really good night's sleep and a good cup of coffee, if that's what you like, or whatever your beverage of choice, in the morning outside, really saying like, how does this, like what happened to the rest of the world? Where could I be of service? How could I present what my company does well into that situation? Once you do that, what seemed to be impossible becomes possible. So let me give you another example to illustrate that. We have one company in our portfolio. What they do, their name is Handsome. Handsome is a kind of a LinkedIn equivalent, because LinkedIn fails badly for a lot of creative industries, including the beauty professionals. So if you think about your barber, your hairdresser, your masseuse, there is no networking and job search opportunity for them, and it has to be done different. That's what Handsome is doing. It works brilliantly when those businesses are operating. It works really poorly when none of them could come to work, or so you would think. And when they obviously went through the period of shock, but then April and Nikki, they thought, okay, this is the time, everyone is at home, everyone is terrified. If our mission is to be of service to those communities, let's connect, let's really go out aggressively, let's give them options and tools and education. So we're going to illustrate our platform, we're going to cross-facilitate members exchange, so that when people are in most dire need, we're here to serve. And guess what happened? Even though they had to cut down their marketing quite a bit because the revenue was suppressed, they've increased the growth, they increased the interaction, they've seen where their system works really well. That would not have possible from the position of fear. That only was possible when they assessed, okay, who are we? What is our customer needing? How could we be of service? And I think if you find yourself, because a lot of these things, they're not obvious. You have to arrive at them. And I think the way to arrive at them is to be super clear on who you are, what are you valuing, and how did the life of your customers have changed. If you put them first, you'll have a lot of really great ideas.
Yep. So we have talked a lot about how to get yourself through COVID and grow your company. Now I think we're going to talk a little bit about Sputnik. And Oksana, do you want to start talking and take the lead on this next part of the presentation?
Sure. So Sputnik, let's say that like the name Sputnik has two meanings, and I think we are very serious about both of them. We chosen the name, actually Joe chosen the name Sputnik as someone who grew up in the former Soviet Union. I personally was resisting that early on. But when he articulated, no, Sputnik was something that elevated the path of every single technology into a completely different trajectory, that really resonated with me right away, because that is the mission of what we do. We select startups and we find ways to help them reach their full potential. We like companies that already made something. We like nerds, like we are self-proclaimed nerds, we love them. And we know what special ingredients to add to their toolkit so that they could be successful. Another thing about the word Sputnik, and that I did not know to share with Joe, because for me this was obvious, and this was Sputnik already existed maybe a couple of months. We were sitting brainstorming on something, and I said, it's actually funny that the meaning of Sputnik really reflects what we do. And Joe's like, what do you mean? I said, of course, Sputnik means partner in Russian. And so with that, I think it's also attitude of being of service, of being a partner to our portfolio company. And I think the combination of a really well thought out, hard driving coaching to get the companies to exceed, combined with our attitude of being of service, being the partner, I think that really separates us apart as I look at, like, you know, a lot of, that's what our online told us separates us apart. I think that, but that's natural to us. That's what we are. That's what we do.
Yeah.
In terms of the three things that we specialize in, I think Joe likes that, is what basically startup is about growth. And so 3 times, how to grow fast, that's where we focus most of the time. We share a lot of different practical tricks on how to do that. We work a lot with how does venture capitalists think about this. But if you were to think about the world from our perspective, we have to evaluate a lot of ideas. It's our job as venture capitalists to live in the future. So we tend to be people who know little about a lot of things. So how do we know that your company is something that the market is ready for? Well, very simply, if it's growing fast, you're likely doing something that people want. And when I say fast, it's important to make definitions, particularly for those of you who might be switching from more traditional corporate job, because in the startup world, fast means 10% week over week, which is very doable in the first few weeks. And you have to learn different things. You have to really transition to a different mode of operation if you were to stick with this for a year. It's a very neat exercise. I highly recommend it to anyone. Whatever your revenue, whatever the metric you measure, like do the simple Excel spreadsheet and project how does 10% week over week growth looks like, because even for those who are very math oriented, the end number that where you have to be a year from now comes in surprisingly big. And it's a very, very useful exercise to say, are you growing quick?
Yeah. Yeah, and that 10% week over week growth, it really matters, because we like to say here, high growth covers a multitude of sins. You can be forgiven for some small mistakes in your company as long as the company is growing quickly and that growth validates product market fit. So a lot of what we're trying to do is help the companies get the product market fit and grow like crazy. And this is us in these pictures. Some of our events and parties. There's Oksana, always terrific, and myself, and I look something like a weirdo typically. But yes, and we're doing business poetry here for one of our events. We do a lot of fun events, and we're even doing them online. You can go to any of our social media feeds and follow us, and you'll get alerted to the various things we do and host, even though now just virtually. This is the overview kind of how our fund works. We look for, people say, oh, do you bet on the horse or do you bet on the jockey? We bet on both. We want great jockeys riding thoroughbreds. It's a 2-step application process where you do the application and then we give you an interview. We invest $100,000 of pre-seed money. You get that money up front at the beginning of the program. It converts at a 30% discount with a $3 million cap. It's based upon the YC safe note, but we have our own version. And there is we take an option to invest an additional $400K. So this is new. In talking to our founders and just looking at them growing, angels, the angel market has been hit hardest under COVID-19. And so raising money from angel investors has become a little bit more difficult. The professional fund managers are still writing checks. In fact, they're writing checks like never before. But in order to get to that point where they're going to look at you where you're doing, $100,000 a month of recurring revenue or more, many companies need additional funds to kind of push themselves to that faster. And so we're putting in that option to invest another $400K to help those companies to take out some of that financial risk. And then we mentor and we train all of the people that we work with, help connect them with funding, change the world, and all that good stuff. We're Texas focused, and we require you to come here for the program. And we don't do anything in franchising, restaurants, real estate, weapons, drugs, multi-level marketing, porn, alcohol, or evil. We really don't invest in evil. And you get a desk for 3 months, up to 6 until the next cohort comes in, then we kick you out. We don't charge you for anything. There's no fees associated with us. We give you money. We're not asking for anything. And we do have pro rata rights that come with our note that we like to keep. And we have follow-on funds, and we're always looking to invest in your future rounds. We are not going to invest more than about 50, maybe 60% in a future round. We don't want to ever take the whole round down ourselves. But we do syndicate with the usual suspects and folks out in the Valley, going forward.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's just actually dwell a little bit on that, because it's very important when you enter the partner you understand our economics. And as Joe mentioned, from the time we pick you, we don't take anything, we just give. So, and we are business, this is not a non-for-profit. So the only way for us to make any money is for the companies we invest in to make a lot of money. And I want you to really dwell on that, because that our interests are completely aligned with the interest of our founders. There is no hidden revenues of any kind that we're gonna ask you to cough up. I think like there is nothing wrong. Like if there are a lot of quality establishments that have different business models, but I think with us it's very important when we tell you to do something or not to do something, because of our economics, because of how we are structured. The only way for us to make money is for you to make a lot of money. So even if you may not like what we are telling you, you would understand that our intention is pure, and it comes from the perspective of helping you be the best company you could be.
Yep. If you get into the program, we joke you can expect 3 months of startup hell where fun goes to die and you grow. And we joke, we're kind of, we joke about that, but it's super intense, right? And it's not uncommon when I come in early in the morning, back when we were coming into the office, that I would see that some people were here sleeping overnight, maybe under their desks. They stayed up all night, cranking and working, and maybe on a new product launch, or like the coding team was there just working all night. It is very intense, because we're expecting you to grow your business 10% week over week, and we're giving you the tools and the education to be able to do that, and the funding to be able to do that. And we expect a lot from the companies that come through, and so expect very intense development. We're not going to blanket you with 5 trillion mentors. We think that there's a whole bunch of mentors that actually we think are very predatory, that go after startups and take advantage of them. The best mentors are the people who don't want anything from you. They just want to help you. Typically, these are people who've already been very successful with a startup, and they believe in you. And so we're looking for missionaries, not mercenaries, that can work with you and have high impact on your growth, because that's what you need early on, is growth mentors. We do have a weekly dinner. We haven't been able to do those because of COVID-19, but typically we have a successful founder who has had a very significant exit, and VCs. We also have a demo day with VCs and angels. I have to say that demo day is a lot of stress, because I think there's this belief that when demo day comes, all these people line up to write you checks. It doesn't work that way. But it gives the companies the company something to work for, to improve their presentation skills. And it really kicks off their fundraising process, I think, on the right foot.
And you do get to start a lot of relationships.
You do.
Because we've been really fortunate to have partners from the best Texas VC funds join in. We've had, ironically, COVID had helped in some ways and have hurt in some other ways, because there were no more geographic boundaries. So all of our allies outside of Texas were able to join in, and some of them are in active dialogue with our companies right now.
Yeah.
Because right now, it's just as easy for you to visit a demo day in Texas as it is to visit a demo day if you are in California or New York.
Yep. We do an annual trip to San Francisco to meet with VCs in the Valley. That's important, we think, and will continue to be, just because of the pool of venture capital that's there. And then we have a lot of alumni events throughout the year. And so once you're in our program, you're always in the program, and you're a Sputnik alumni. Mm-hmm. So who is a good fit for Sputnik ATX? Oksana, you want this one?
Well, sure, of course. First, I think, we invest in founders who are makers. No offense if this is you, but we generally do not invest in 2 MBAs with a PowerPoint. We want you to have a product and a customer, and we want you to be a deep expert in whatever it is you're building. I think that's super important to us. The second one is a big deal for us. We believe that you don't have to be a jerk to win in this space. In fact, we actively, we're doing our best to screen for jerks. The reason is the alumni network is really, really important, a secret weapon. And the longer we go, the stronger that becomes. And we want people to generally not only committed to their own success, but will help their fellow alumni, their fellow cohort mates to be successful. We actively pick companies that never, ever, ever compete with each other. And because of that, you graduate having a peer, small but really tested by fire peer network that will go through the same stages as you will, and you will have that thought partner, someone you could bounce ideas off when the going gets tough, which it inevitably will. Consumer surplus, we've talked about that. We absolutely look at both the space you play in as well as your solution. That is very important. Otherwise, there is no way you will ever grow big. Like, for instance, if we've had this really nice company with a good charitable band that were doing hair scrunchies applied to our company. And while I think they could be a very good family business, and the business was very well run, and it was a wonderful foundation, we liked them very, very much, then not the right fit for Sputnik, because we do not see many scenarios where they could become a unicorn. As a result, our program is not the right fit for them. You have to have a product, minimal viable product. I love to say, because English is not my first language, I focus on words, and every single word in this concept is very important. It is minimal, so like it's not yet perfect, it's still a lot to improve, but it's viable. It could be useful, and it should be delivering consumer surplus for someone. It has to be product, it has to work. You have to have one customer. And that is important, because when we focus on growth, you have to have something that you could sell, and you have to should have tested it on someone. We love more than one founders. We've made exceptions in certain instances. It's a difficult, long road. It's better with a friend. That's pretty much it. And we also look, when we are interviewing you, we believe you are interviewing us. It's very difficult to divorce your investor. And so just like you have to like someone who's writing you a check, because that person is with you until you exit the company, which generally is on average 8 to 10 years.
Hi, Oksana. This is Joyce Dooley with Geekdom, just stepping in for a second. We did have a question come in, so I want to make sure that we address it from Jenny1234. She asks, if we have an idea that can be shown in software, but the platform is old, is it still worth doing the MVP in the old tech versus waiting? For an example, Microsoft HoloLens 1 versus HoloLens 2.
Let me make sure I understand the question correctly. Yeah. You're adding features to the MVP, but the MVP already exists, so that it's there as a base product, but you plan on adding more features to it in the future. Is that kind of what am I thinking about this correctly?
Yeah, it's hard because I think it's not Joyce. So maybe Jenny could clarify this, but in the meantime, go back to the minimal viable product. No product is perfect. The products are really clunky early on. The question is, if the way the product is right now, could you be selling it to people? Could you be testing whether you could grow? Almost every product will get improved on. So without really, the truthful answer to this question is it depends. But I think you could answer this by, if this could be sellable, if someone is enjoying it right now, every product gets revisited, every platform gets updated. That happens all the time. The question is, could you sell something to someone right now? And if the answer to that is yes, and if you have a customer, then I think Sputnik might be a right fit for you.
Yeah, so the person was saying that it would be an app that runs on the Microsoft.
Oh, okay.
It's an app that runs in a Microsoft platform. Well, if they have the MVP for the app, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
But the MVP can't be Microsoft. It has to be something that they've done.
Yeah, they're continuing to say that there's a big difference between the two hardware platforms.
Yeah, I'm not honestly that familiar with the Microsoft HoloLens. So this maybe
Well,
is offline discussion.
Yeah, what I would say is we have lots of office hours that we make ourselves available to, because this sounds like it's really specific. And so sign up for our office hours.
2 to 3, sign up, and we're happy to talk about this.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, just go to our Twitter and Facebook and other accounts, and you can see the signups for the office hours. It's pretty straightforward. So our selection process, you can apply online. Our deadline is June 30th. There's like a first level of screening, and then Joe and Oksana, that's us. We pick the finalists for the interviews. Right now, we're targeting the 3rd week of July for doing those interviews. By the way, our last application, we had 700 applicants. It takes us a while to get through all of the applications, and so please be patient with us. And we'll get out to everybody, and we make decisions at the end of the week. So it goes real fast. And as soon as we decide, like, the funding is quickly, class starts, and it moves fast.
Yeah. This year might be slightly different because I think Joe and I are in literally weekly conversations on when and how we start that, because it could be that we stick to this very schedule. But given that COVID situation, we are also a startup. It's affecting how we do the work. And we are looking to the government's guidance, the Mayor Adler's guidance on the safety. And based on that, we may choose to start exactly as is and maybe do a lot of online with some socially distancing, getting together. We may also choose, if we think that it's rapidly improving and we could be more in person, which is frankly my favorite modality, then we may delay it by a couple of weeks. We do not, like anyone else in this current environment, we have to be flexible and adjust with extra information as it becomes available.
Yeah, there will be a cohort. We can't tell you
definitely
how that's going to work until we see how COVID plays out. But yes. Okay, so any other questions? If you want to get to know us, we got a bunch of events where you can come to see us, and they're all on our website. You can go to our myriad social media websites to find out about them. This is what we looked like back when it was fun and we could all be together. And now let's open up to questions. Any other questions?
There was another comment earlier, Joe, I think it was in regards to you talking about mentors. And then what you said, it says, we are looking for not mercenaries. They just wanted to clarify on what you were looking for in mentors.
Oh, you need mentors that are missionaries, not mercenaries. So there's a lot of people who are like, hey, I'll be your mentor, pay me, or I'll be your mentor, give me half your company or whatever, right? The best mentors are people who are like, oh my gosh, when I started my company, I remember how hard it was. I can help you. I don't need the money. I just want to help you because I really believe in what you're doing. What you're doing is important. Let me help you. I don't need, like if you're offering me a little bit of money, that's not why I'm helping you. I'm helping you because I believe in what you're doing and I want to see you succeed. And I have the personal, social, and professional capital to help you without requiring money from you. I believe in you. They're missionaries.
We generally believe, guys, that young companies, you should not be buying a lot of consulting. There's a value in figuring it. Almost every information is out there that you could get educated on. But for instance, where people err is like, let me hire the master salesperson and they're going to sell this for me. Guess what? The founders have to be the first salespeople. Once you figure out how to sell, then you could scale it up.
Yeah.
And this is, and that phrase, missionaries, not mercenaries, very important for startups because you're doing something new, you're doing something difficult. I expect you to pay significantly less than market to people. And I would love for you not to get blackmailed into, but if I were to work at Google, they would pay me X. Because that has nothing to do with where you are and whether this person is the right fit for the company. Because someone has to believe in what you're doing enough to be willing to take a substantial chunk of their compensation in equity. and expect to get market once you get to your A or B round. And if they cannot, that does not make them a bad person. They might be in a season of life where stability is more important than risk taking a reward for that risk, but they might not be the right fit for you guys. So really be mindful. Missionaries, not mercenaries, a very important phrase to repeat to yourself when you're picking a mentor, when you're hiring, because you are on a very difficult path and you need people who will see the world the way you do and are willing to bleed with you as you're trying to achieve your mission, your objective.
Yeah, capital is so scarce early on. Every dollar you can save that can be plowed into marketing and sales really, really matters. And so those early employees, that they're missionaries is important, because missionaries do things because they have faith and they believe it's not about the money, it's about changing the world, right? And you need people who share your vision on how the world should be different. And if people don't share that vision, then don't hire them, because those early employees, they also get equity, right? And they're going to get more equity than the people who come in later. So if it works out, and if that missionary vision is correct, those people will be compensated far beyond anything you can give them right now. And so give them equity, for the early employees, and hire those missionaries, because the mercenaries, they just want to get paid. And if someone offers them more, they leave. Yeah. They just couldn't give,
Yeah. When the going gets tough, they just want to run, and that's where you could least afford it.
Correct. Okay, other questions?
I don't see any other at the moment. Give them a few more seconds.
So Joyce and Matthew, do you guys have questions for us after listening?
I don't actually have any questions at the moment, but I want to say thank you, because I think that this was a really great way to introduce Sputnik to our community. I know that we've kind of been in each other's spheres for a while, but this is a fantastic presentation. It's so good to meet you and Oksana and to learn more about the Sputnik process and how people can get involved. I think because of Geekdom's mission and how we have crafted our community and being helpful and really being engaging and putting such an emphasis on mentorship and collaboration, this is a really awesome place for people who are in our ecosystem to maybe look for the next step, right? How do they get involved? Where do they get plugged in? And so we just really appreciate you guys taking the time. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say about it other than thank you.
Yeah, and I think
very much.
I think we've had companies from Geekdom that we funded. Wasn't Tenavox? Oksana, you mentioned Tenavox earlier.
Tenavox, that was the thing. Maybe they went through Geekdom, but you met them in San Antonio, that's for sure. But I don't remember which affiliation.
They came through Geekdom,
I mean, it's
correct?
entirely. I'm not actually certain about that. So, I happen to be one of the founding members of Geekdom. And so we've been around for 9 years come this October. And so we've seen a lot of startup companies come through our space. And, some of them went through the Techstars Cloud Accelerator program that we had here for a while. Some of them have been involved in some of the programs, or some people just sort of show up organically in our space. And so now we have a little bit more formal channels in tracking those companies. Right. But if you did, that's fantastic, and we're really thrilled that you were able to work with them.
I did a quick search on Crunchbase, and yes, they came through, and they even have a note on their cap table from the Geekdom Fund.
Oh, so they went through the Geekdom Fund. Got it. Okay. Yeah. So the Geekdom Fund is a really great team of people that do help local startup companies in the Geekdom space in San Antonio area, as well as others. And that's sort of a private fund separate from the Geekdom community as a whole. But if they were involved with Geekdom Fund, then we're very hopeful that they were able to spend time with us in the community space as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were working out of offices there too for a little while.
That I'm not so sure, but we'll see. Listen, we want more collaboration.
And we'd love more.
Yeah.
Oh, I can keep you busy. You can ask anybody in the space. If you want to get plugged in, man, can I help you out?
Awesome.
We would love that.
Did you have anything to add? Oh, sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, I was just to say, we think of San Antonio and Austin as one metropolitan area, because if you've made the drive, it's just city pretty much between the two these days. And, that Austin, San Antonio core is just great. We'd love to see more San Antonio companies coming into the program.
Yeah, I mean, just in the last 2 weeks alone, we've had a couple of out-of-state transplant startup companies and founders come to
Nice.
our community. And so Texas as a whole, I have a background as an emerging technologies analyst, and I've been working with startup companies and out of this space for a very long time. And the market for market opportunities, funding opportunities, exploration, lean innovation, that's coming to Texas and San Antonio specifically, which is really nice to see a lot of our innovation and research and all of that talent kind of move to the private sector and become more visible. And so we're really excited to work with you more fully to expand on that.
Great. Great, absolutely.
Matt, did you have anything to add before we kind of wrap it up, unless we have last minute questions?
Listen, let me just, like, for those of you who are working on their startup ideas, it's a difficult path, but it's very exhilarating. And I just want to congratulate you on taking a brave choice. It's very difficult. So when the life seems crazy, it's not you, it's the situation. Know that there are a lot of people that could help you on this journey. Sputnik is definitely one of them. So we would love to hear from you. We meet with a lot of founders. And even if they're not the right investment stage for us, either just yet or already past that, we love to help companies because we live and breathe startups. And we want Texas ecosystem to be one of the best in the country. And we're working toward that. Good luck on your businesses and good luck in staying safe and healthy during this COVID situation that will pass.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Oksana. Joe, did you have any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
Nope, I think she said it all.
Yeah, I think that this was absolutely wonderful and phenomenal. We look forward to having more of these with you. For those of you who are tuning in or who will tune in later, like, please stay up to date with like other things that are coming out of Sputnik as well as Geekdom. We have a couple of workshops planned next week, so we hope that you tune into those as well. And if you have any questions or more information on how to get involved in either organization, you can definitely reach out to Sputnik directly or email us at info@geekdom.com. Thank you so much. You guys have a really fantastic week. We'll see you guys soon.
Bye, thank you.